Today's conversation is a really important one for me personally, because it's part of my own healing journey and the decisions I've had to make along that path. I'd like to introduce Dr. Jeffrey Hubbard, who has been a part of my support system as I've been navigating this process. Dr. Hubbard has a background in biology, chemistry, and physiology, and he earned his medical degree from Southern Illinois University. Over the years, he's expanded beyond traditional medicine into more integrative and functional approaches, bringing together conventional care with alternative and emerging therapies. He is also the founder of Committed Care, where his focus on delivering more holistic and accessible healthcare, especially in the communities that are often underserved. What I appreciate most is his willingness to explore and evaluate new approaches to healing, while still grounded in his medical training and experience. And in my own journey, he introduced me to modalities that were completely new to me, including stem cell activation patches and infrared sauna therapy, both of which I've now integrated into my daily practice. So today I wanted to bring him into this space to share more about his perspective, his experience, and how he approaches healing in a more integrative way. I'm really grateful to have this conversation with you today. So let me ask the audience, if you were told you had growing masses in your body and the only path forward seemed to be invasive procedures, would you question it? And if you're here live with us, just pop comments into the chat. We are both very excited to interact with you as you're here today. What if there were other ways to support the body, ways that work with the body instead of against it? So just give a little brief information about my experience and how I came to this. My results, when I received my test results in September 2025, I had to make decisions quickly. And all of the options I was given did not feel like it was aligning with me. When I say test results, for some of you who are new to my channel, it was a mammogram, sonogram to identify masses, 2 to 3. They weren't sure how many were growing. It looked like 2, could have been 3, growing in my left breast. So there was an overwhelm of information at first. There was a pressure from the medical doctor, the radiologist, to act quickly. And a feeling something just didn't fully make sense to me. And so I started to ask deeper questions. And as an Ayurvedic practitioner, practicing practitioner, I had a strong foundation in treating and working excess tissue growth in the body. But I knew I needed to bring in other perspectives. I knew that wasn't the only course that I was going to take. My meditation, yoga, my seasonal diet and cleansing gave me a strong foundation. It gave me that ability to feel mentally balanced and clear to make decisions. But I knew, and this is what the topic of today's theme is, I knew I needed to integrate possibly traditional medicine, alternative, and emerging therapies. So Dr. Jeffrey Hubbard, like I said, he has a background in biology, chemistry, physiology. He has a medical degree. He shifts into integrative and functional medicine. He's the founder of Committed Care. He's a doctor who looks beyond conventional pathways. So Dr. Hubbard, what else would you like to add about yourself and about your experiences together with me before we go into our conversations today?
I need to put you on payroll. You make me sound so great.
You're awesome.
Well, I just think, guys, the reality is that we're ranked as a nation 33rd in providing adequate healthcare services. Just let that sink in for a second. We are one of the premier countries in the world, at least from our vantage point. We're looking at things from our lens, and that's interesting to me that there's other countries that are practicing different types of medicine or encouraging different types of approaches to our health, and they're getting better outcomes. And so that was one of the original things that got me to thinking perhaps I should look in a different direction. And, my personal journey, both of my parents are deceased. Both sets of grandparents are deceased. And I had to watch all of that. And it was disheartening that somebody who's in the profession could not render the care necessary to help my family members actually have long, healthy lives. So it just created a different mindset for me, that I wanted to take things slightly differently. I felt like, the vast majority of people that I were working with just weren't getting better. They weren't seeing the results that they honestly wanted to see. And so it made me look outside of some of the traditional training that I received as a medical doctor and find out what other ways I could be of support to those who really want to see a healing and not just management of a condition. And I think that's a lot of what happens in our traditional healthcare system. It's more of management of these illnesses versus getting to the root cause and problems of what actually are happening inside the body. And so I love what you said. I love the fact that you practice Ayurveda and that you are intentional about listening to your system, listening to your body, and that you decided, hey, the treatment modalities that you are presenting to me don't necessarily align with my thinking and how I want to treat my body. And so that's, I think, is just a huge step in the right direction and something that I think everybody should begin to think a little bit more about so that they can be intentional about their decision for therapy or treatment whenever something does come up. And, be informed about the options they have available to them. And my true hope is that you can be just as intentional and excited about your health prior to developing some sort of condition or challenge, as you do once you have a diagnosis or something happens that does not feel good. So I think if we are just as intentional and excited and motivated to be strong-willed about our health up front, the opportunity or the potential for disease to develop goes down significantly.
Oh, 100%. You and I, we've been aligned on so many things. I knew when I first, met you, and I even before that, when I read about Medicare, and we'll talk about that later, a little bit later in today's broadcast and what you do with that. I just, I knew it was an intuitive feeling. I knew this is where my alignment is. And just to go into, I think what you said kind of sets up as we go into the things that we're going to discuss today, just a little background in when I was presented with that information from the radiologist with the masses. The question is, they want, for the allopathic Western treatment plan, they want to go right into biopsy. And so that was something that was completely new to me. And I had consulted with a colleague and friend of ours, who is Tina Thornton, and she had told me her experience in working with clients with biopsy, and she was strongly opposed to that. And other practitioners I knew, they said, this is it is counterintuitive, counterproductive to the body if we're going down the alternative route. When you do the biopsy, the purpose in the allopathy is that's how they conduct their treatment plan. They, identify the tissue, they identify which type of medicine or chemotherapy they're going to use, radiation. So it's all going down that path. And I was very clear. I did not feel that was the path that I was going down. I possibly could have been going down, congruent. It's, I know that we can go down the allopathic and alternative congruently. It's what was aligning with the individual. It wasn't aligning with me to do that. And so I began questioning that process. When I spoke to the radiologist and she explained the procedure for the biopsy, she said initially she wanted to do 5. So there was, the lumps identified. I could feel them palpable in the left breast, and then she wanted to go into the underarm tissue, which was presenting as unusual. And then she wanted to do 3 in the right breast, which wasn't presenting with anything other than from their sonogram that identified crystal formations that could be potentially formed. And as we talked, she said, well, we don't need to do the 3, we'll just do the 2. So I'm listening to her and I'm listening to all the procedures. Then I asked her, I said, is there any alternative medicine practices that you do once we've gone through, the biopsy? She said she didn't know about any of that. She knew patients of hers would go to Canada or Mexico if that's the path, but she couldn't give me any kind of recommendations. I said, okay. It was just a question that I wanted to ask and see what her thoughts on that were. And then I said, I've researched or, other information is presented to me that when you do a biopsy, you're actually puncturing the membrane around the tumor, which is protecting the rest of the body from the tumor. And that has a tendency to disperse those cancer cells into the rest of the body. And when it's in the lymph system, we know that, my information, the lymph system is what flushes out the toxins. And so there will be swelling in the lymph system as your body is naturally processing that. And she said, well, no, that's not my information. My information is that the cells, when they get into the lymph system, the markers are picked up and they go into other parts of the body, and it has not to do with the blood. So there was something that just, I'm definitely not a medical doctor. I do have in my background experiences with anatomy and physiology, but definitely not to the level of Dr. Hubbard. So those things just weren't jiving with me. And that's when I had those questions, those deeper questions I wanted to present with Dr. Hubbard. So Dr. Hubbard, can you explain your perspective on biopsy procedures and when they are necessary or not?
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. A tumor, by definition, is a fibrin sheath, right? And it's created by our immune system. It is the body's defense mechanism against those abnormally growing cells. So we have DNA damage and various different things, emotional, environmental. And I think that's one thing. I mean, we could have a whole nother conversation on why we develop these abnormally growing cells in the first place. But let's put that aside for right now. The reality is that when the body recognizes that these cells are growing abnormally, the natural mechanism is to wall them off from the rest of the body so that growth does not impact the other areas. And so the immune system is walling off this with this fibrin sheath, okay? So the tumor itself is actually a good sign. If we're really talking about things from a technical perspective, it's preventing the continual spread of these abnormally growing cells. And so when you do puncture that, you're exactly right. You're in essence releasing those abnormally growing cells for them to potentially impact the rest of the body. These tumors really don't give us a problem until they impact some area that creates a symptom, right? So the larger the tumor is, it may push on this area of an organ, or it may cause this element to change, right? In your instance, it was palpable. So you noticed it because you felt a lump there. The reality is that many people live a very, very long time. Some people live most of their life with a tumor that they don't even recognize that they have, because it does not actually impact some function. So you use the exact word that I use, is counterintuitive to biopsy something unless your approach is going to be pathological in nature, right? So the biopsy is designed for the pathologist to develop a portfolio of the cells that are growing there, and to use some chemotherapy medicine or some other modality that in traditional medicine is used for that particular cell type or that particular problem. And so if you're going to go a different route, I think the biopsy does not help very much.
Yeah, agreed. And that That was a key turning point for me because it's one thing to have that feeling, but that was in you and to be presented with that information. But when I met you and you were able to clarify it just in the same way that you did now, it was empowering for me to feel like, okay, yes, it was validating and empowering. So much appreciation to, how, I was introduced to you and for you to explain that. And that's, one of the messages I want to get out there to the public, that you do have that. This is, information that's not available to us readily in the Western traditions. They don't say, oh, sure, if you want to go down the alternative, the biopsy isn't needed.
Right. And I think just to add a little bit more gravy on the potatoes, if you will, the foundation of why you're developing an illness is really where I like to start. And that's not where traditional oncology starts.
Yeah.
And just, I'd say allopathic medicine doesn't start there. It starts with the problem. The problem is you have this abnormal growth and we need to tackle that and address that. Or you've had these abnormal lab values or whatever, and we need to address that, not the person. And so, that was really great when we sort of established our connection, is you were very present and conscious of why you may have been developing these abnormally growing cells. And you said, hey, doc, I'm going to work on that. Just help me to create some other strategies around how I can support myself while I'm unpacking the emotions that are connected to this illness. And I think that's so big, right? Stress, emotion, grief, trauma, all of these things, you don't know how they impact you until they do. And so I think that's another message that I think would be valuable for the audience, is get to the root, get to the foundation of why you're having the problem. And that really is where you can see true recovery.
Oh, 100%. Thank you for bringing that in the conversation, because that's the other reason why I am so excited to do these YouTube broadcasts, is that it's not just, I don't want to just meet people who have identified lumps in their breast or lumps in their body, but the first 5-6 episodes I've already done is that, it's that foundational. And when you change the rhythms in your body, you become aware of your body, you start paying attention to your body's going to manifest a disease from the Ayurvedic perspective wherever there's weakness. I had identified where there was, this weakness. I could see that linearly, in my experience of life, but it might be manifesting in someone else's if you have out of balance rhythms and routines and practices and you're not tuning into the body. So yeah, it's all about that root cause and changing those rhythms, because you can change the outcome of whether you think you have hereditary genetic predispositions. That's not in any way, shape, or form a guarantee. That only means you have the tendency of a pattern. And if you change those patterns, that's not going to definitely be a part of your experience.
Well, you just basically defined epigenetics, which is a growing field. When I was in school, it was just sort of a theory, but now we know that it is 100% accurate that, yes, you may have genetics that are susceptible for certain things, but once you understand that and you don't eat this, or you don't put yourself in this environment, or you don't do these things, then the likelihood of you developing what your grandparents had, or what your parents had, or what your siblings had, it can be adjusted.
Yeah, absolutely. We're getting into the genetics, the DNA. This kind of brings us to our next discussion topic, is stem cell patches. This was completely new to me. And again, our common friend, Tina Thornton and colleagues, she had introduced you to me a couple of years prior when I first kind of noticed those lumps in the end of 2023, the fall of 2023. She said, hey, I think this would really benefit you. And I was still gathering information. I wasn't quite sure. I had attended some of your calls, your weekly calls and other doctors' calls, and I was listening and I was gathering the information. So I kind of had it swimming in the background. So it was something that was in my awareness to be presented with it. So would you explain the X39 and the glutathione patches and why you recommend them?
Yeah, absolutely. So back in 2020, I was introduced to the company LifeWave. LifeWave is a biotech company. It's really one of the best kept secrets in the wellness industry, in my opinion. They've been around for 20 years now, was established in 2004. And the technology centers around a science called photobiomodulation. So without getting too sciencey and too deep into the details, it's just the body's natural inclination to respond to certain frequencies and wavelengths of light. So many of your audience and people who are listening to this probably already know that infrared light is a big supportive system of the body. The body responds in various different ways to infrared light, both far and near infrared light. So these patches actually are activated by near infrared light. And the beautiful part about this is that you don't need a light bulb. You actually use your own body heat. Your body heat is a form of near infrared light. And so these patches simply reflect frequencies that are needed by the body to produce these molecules. And it's simply phenomenal. They just flat out work. And the X39 is really exciting. That really transformed the company in regards to sales because it was so powerful. It stimulates the production of a molecule called GHKCU. And for those who may know about the peptide industry, GHKCU is really popular now for skin rejuvenation and beauty, et cetera. But the value of this molecule is much deeper than just what happens on the surface. It's a gene expression modulator is the scientific term, which means that it goes into the nucleus of the cell and it helps to influence the enhancement of certain genes. It's been studied since the early 1970s. Currently, there's 4,192 different genes that this molecule has been shown to influence, whether it's improvement of the way this gene functions or the suppression of the way that gene functions. But it just really revolutionizes the way the cell functions, the way a cell works. And so we know that cells are the foundational unit. So the more appropriate your cells are working, the better your tissues and organs and organ systems are working. So I've just seen so many different benefits from consistently using the LifeWave technology. And so a lot of people are just out of alignment. And that's the foundation for their issue or their condition. And so by incorporating LifeWave into your regimen, you get a jump start, you get a boost. I really love this one gentleman. He says his experience with the patch is that he feels like he plugged himself into the outlet. And I just love that because it really does feel like you're just a jump starter. You feel younger, you feel more vibrant, you sleep better. And that's just because your cells are working appropriately.
Yeah, I got, there's a lot of modalities in my treatment plan as you and I've discussed, and I definitely feel that. And one of the proof in the pudding was when I sent my son a photo of me, and he's like, he thought it was from 5 years ago. And I said, no, that was just last week. And he's like, wow, you must have found the fountain of youth, Mom. Because he had seen me, 5-6 months prior. So, if that superficial skin, improving that look, that's awesome. That's a great side effect, I think. Thank you very much.
Yep. I mean, looking younger and having more elasticity in your skin and all of that good stuff, obviously that's a value. But I think just the foundational component is even more exciting. And I'll just throw in really quickly, the glutathione patch
Oh, yeah.
Most people who are in the wellness industry or just are familiar with these different types of therapies, very common in the IV hydration space. Glutathione is a master antioxidant, and it just helps to support immune function. It helps to eliminate heavy metals and toxins from the body. It's like the garbage man of the cell. And so the beautiful part about LifeWave is that you're not introducing a synthetic component into the body. You're stimulating the body's natural production of these molecules. And so every cell in our body produces glutathione, but it tends to go down and it tends to be less effectively produced as we age and when we're impacted by various different environmental factors and stress, et cetera. So revving up glutathione is another amazing way to support yourself, not just when you're in crisis, but as a preventative modality as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I use both those patches as per your recommendation and continue. And I'm in the 6th month since I met you. And so definitely daily. And I stay grounded in my Ayurvedic practices and my nervous system regulation through my daily meditation and yoga. And as I've mentioned to my audience, my viewers, that in other episodes, I have a strong daily meditation, breathing, pranayama, regular sleep pattern with the sun and the moon, staying in that routine, in that rhythm, body practices that ground my nervous system. And so that I can pivot in the face of what could have been a debilitating trauma information. When you're presented with something like that, it can be traumatizing. And so there is a certain level of that. But when I had those foundational practices, and that's what I want to really present to the audience, is to really have those foundational practices so that when we are, as we will in this life, be presented with extreme information and critical decisions, you're able to be discerning, calm, mobilize, and bring new practices and learn how to support the body to heal itself. So I didn't abandon what I knew. I just expanded with the help and support of Dr. Hubbard. So this brings me to our next one that you brought into me, infrared sauna. And you touched upon infrared with the patches. So I want to go deeper into it. And from my experience, sweating is a very critical component of what our body already does naturally. So it eliminates, we have so many available, this body is incredible, of eliminating the toxins through our elimination systems, and sweating is one. And this was where I traditionally was challenged. As we move in Ayurveda, we call it the Vata time of life. For women, it's when you get to perimenopause and menopause, past menopause. And for men, the same kind of, in that age range, 50s and 60s, the body becomes drier. And for me, sweating was an issue. And I knew that was probably one of the components that helped my body environment develop toward building a mass in my breast. So I knew sweating was an issue. It was difficult for me, even when I was exercising, to kind of break that sweat. And in Ayurveda, we understand 2 things about health and well-being: is you have to sweat and you have to laugh every day. The laughing really reorganizes your nervous system, and the sweating eliminates the toxins. So it was, for me, it was already a practice I had, moving to that sweating when I did my cleansing, my seasonal cleansing. But I wasn't always breaking a sweat. The body would get heated up. So when Dr. Hubbard presented me with the infrared sauna, the home infrared sauna, which he'll talk about that, I'll talk about that. At 30 minutes, I was not breaking the sweat. But once I went past almost like 31 minutes, it's like the rain began to pour from my body. So I was in there for up to 45 minutes. And that took me about 2 months, a month and a half to 2 months to figure that out. And now I'm just sweating like rain every day when I'm in my infrared sauna. So Dr. Hubbard, why is infrared sauna so effective, and who can benefit from it?
I'll answer the first question first. The last question first. Everybody can benefit from it. There's some really valuable research, and don't quote me exactly on the statistics of it, but what they found is that when you are in the infrared sauna 3 times a week, you reduce your risk of cardiovascular related death by 40%. And I think if you go 5 days a week, it's even more significant, like 70%. So my dad passed away from a heart attack in his late 30s. So this has been a part of why I wanted to be a doctor. Obviously, that was very significant situation in my family, but also, perhaps I could be of value to prevent somebody else's from loss like that. And so that was what originally got me into infrared, is listening and reading some of those cardiologists and some of those authors that presented this information. Obviously, what I already knew from LifeWave and infrared light associated with that technology. But sweating in general is something that is just so valuable. I know that from being a former athlete and working out and all of that good stuff. It's one of the best ways in which to eliminate lactic acid buildup and all of these various different things that are detrimental to your system over time. And so instead of going out and running 4 or 5 miles, most people can't handle that, don't do that to be able to get the sweat going. Getting into the infrared sauna is a great way. And you mentioned earlier the lymphatics. The lymphatic system is something that does not get enough support. It does not get enough conversation. It is our sewer system of the body. So just imagine your city, if your sewer system is backed up in your city, it doesn't take very long for trash and excrement and all sorts of things to wash up into your yard or whatever the case may be. So think of that's also another awesome way to support your lymphatic system. And also vibrational plates and rebounding. Those are all things that are great for the lymphatics also.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a whole other conversation that we could continue again about the lymphatic system. So what's coming up for you as you hear this? I'm asking the audience, any questions you have, pop them into the chat, reflections you have on what Dr. Hubbard or what I've presented. We would love to engage with you. So as we're paying attention to the chat, see if any comments are coming up. I just want to reinforce that healing is not one path. It's not the one path that most of the mass public has been presented with. It's about alignment. It's about awareness. And I hope you hear that clearly in Dr. Hubbard's experience, his expertise, his knowledge. He really hits that home. And you have agency in your decisions. Where and how can folks connect with you, Dr. Hubbard? And I want to go into, we haven't even talked about Medicare. I guess oh yeah, here we go. Can you share, before, I definitely don't want to leave this conversation without talking about Medicare, because that was really the hook that, said, hey, this is the person I want to align with. Can you share more about Medicare and your approach to integrative healing?
Yes, absolutely. So Medicare really stems from the culmination of all of these different discussions we've had today, actually, just realizing that there's a lot of individuals that are slipping through the cracks in our healthcare system. They're not properly supported. They don't have the information. The information they do have maybe is confusing or too complex for them to really completely process. And so I just recognized those things through my educational journey. And I thought to myself, wow, like there's a lot of people who are just succumbing to their illness from lack of knowledge, from lack of information. And so I wanted to create a platform, to create a business that helps people to be informed and to make solid decisions about what they want to do, not after the disease, but prior to. And so that's really the foundation of Medicare. It's based in ancient Kemetic principles. So in ancient Egypt, it was called Kemet, and they practiced something called Ma'at. And
Okay.
Ma'at is basically roughly translated into truth, righteousness, justice, equality, and equilibrium. And so that's what I really love about their society. This foundational approach to living was what created the longevity of their culture. And I think Medicare has the opportunity as it grows to really provide balance and support to our healthcare system, because it ties these wellness and integrated approaches to a more traditional style of how people experience healthcare. And so that's the foundation there, and it's grown. It's now its own ecosystem. We just launched a really cool Medicare wellness community. It's a digital platform. I call it a clinic in the cloud, basically where you can hook arms with like-minded individuals and other practitioners like myself, and really learn your body, learn what's happening, learn how you can put your best foot forward in responding to concerns that you may have. And so we're excited about that and many other things to come. So it's a work in progress, and we're excited to have any and everyone participate as they decide to.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that whole experience. How can folks connect with you? And I've posted the links that you shared with me, I've posted them in the description below, so you can get those links right now if you're watching live or if you're watching the replay. Any other specific ways folks can connect with you, Dr. Hubbard?
Yeah, absolutely. We're on all the social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We're on LinkedIn, TikTok. But probably the easiest way is just to shoot me an email, and the team will get back to you. It's at info@kemedicare.com, info at Kemedicare, KEMETICARE.com, and we'll get you plugged in where you need to be plugged in. So, I mean, there's opportunity for one-on-one engagement like Christina and I have, and then there's also all sorts of other plans and strategies that we can implement. So we just need to figure out how you plug in, because it's all about personalization and making sure that everything is tailored directly to you.
Yeah, and as a reminder, your impetus is to focus also on communities that have been traditionally underserved with Medicare, and that's wonderful. And don't worry about if you didn't write down the information he said about how to get a hold of him. I have that info email popped into the discussion below, so go ahead and go into that discussion below this video or on the replay. Watch the replay. There's a lot of information here. I hope you were taking notes. There's a lot of information. So go ahead and watch that replay. Share it with those that you feel can benefit from this information. Subscribe to this channel, because I will be back here every week presenting my wellness path. And I want to hear from you. What other things what are interests for you that I can focus on an upcoming episode if something is really, speaking to you. I'll see you next Friday, 11 a.m. Central Time.
Thank you. I hope to be back again. I'm going to twist your arm.
Oh, you don't have to twist, Dr. Hubbard. It's my honor to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Great discussion.